It is so exciting to be here. That's it. Yeah. So everybody, turn your chairs towards me. Seriously, because you don't want to be looking over your shoulder. And just do what I do. If we could have some music. Lift, 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 change sides and lift. 2, 3, 4, change sides and lift a little louder. 2, lift, 2. Now once, right arm and lift. 2, 3, and 4, left arm and lift. 2, 3, and 4, twice right. 2, twice left. 2, now once and once and once and once. Now both arms, and I have a microphone, so I can only lift one arm. Both arms, that's it, good. To the right and reach. 2, 3, and 4, change left. 2, 3, and 4, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You got another right and the left, you hit somebody. Change, 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 stand up, sit down, stand up. This is so you don't have to go to your aerobics class later. Up and down and up, down and up, down and up. Stay there. Wag your hips. And really wag them. Get those hips moving. Good. Now circle, circle, circle. Circle the other way. Circle, 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 circle. Sit down. Bounce your feet. Very good. Clap your hands. Very good. Now, knees, hands, knees, hands, knees, hands, knees, hands, knees, hands, shoulder, head, knees, head, shoulder, head, and stop. And stop. That's what I used to do at the Edge. And I was thinking about could somebody give me a 10-minute warning and then a 5-minute warning? Okay, because I'll talk forever. And because I really like to. Where do I begin? How many of you have ever heard a speaker talk about how they basically grew up under a turnip patch and their life was miserable and they were poor and it was hard? Yes? Heard that speech? It's not mine. I was born rich. I mean really rich. Chauffeur rich. Houses in many parts of the country rich. Nanny rich. And boarding school rich. And it was a nice life. It was a very nice life. My sister and I talk about it a lot. And then when I went off to college, my mother told me I couldn't date the boy I was dating. So I married him. I mean, what else do you do? And we moved to New York, and then he went back to school. I was 19. Stupid. And I was 19. He went back to school, and I supported him. And at the time, I had no skills, except one really good one. My mother, Bonnie Pruden, is the nation's foremost fitness authority. She started the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports, and I was brought up in the household of fitness. So I watched my mother do it when I was a kid. She created a school, and she created a whole fitness thing. And so I decided to do that. And I put an ad in the Village Voice, because my husband and I lived in Greenwich Village, and then Mrs. Sussman exercise classes. Well, nobody signed up. And I said to my husband, I said, I think I have to use my mother's name. Her name is Pruden. And so I called my mother and got permission, and okay, now it's Exercise by Susie Pruden. And people started calling. There is such a thing as nepotism. I used it. It got me into everywhere I got into. Then it was up to me to stay there. And staying there is a little different than getting there. Doors opened, but then I had to really make it work. So I had my school, which was in my apartment on a 5th floor walk up in Greenwich Village. And I figured my clients got in shape just getting to my office. You know? And I did that there. Then I moved to the Upper West Side. And during that time, we decided to have a baby while I was putting my husband through school. And youth. So I did it. And I kept advertising in the Upper West Side papers, and I had about maybe 8 students. It was tight. But then in New York City, it wasn't that expensive. We had a rent-controlled apartment. You're going to hate this. We had a rent-controlled apartment on the Upper West Side on 87th Street between West End and Riverside. We were the most expensive apartment in the building for $183 a month. I later bought that apartment for $14,000. It's worth about $4 million now. So someone called me and said, "Do you teach toddlers?" And my son was a toddler at the time, and I said, "Well, I don't have a class for toddlers, but I teach my son, so sure." You know the saying, say yes and figure it out. That's been my motto. So of course I'll teach toddlers. You bring the kids, I'll teach them. And so she brought the kids. It was a Thursday morning. Wednesday night, I called my mother, and I said, "Mom, what do I do?" These famous words created my business. She said, "Keep them busy." That's all she said, "Keep them busy." I did. Do you know you have to change an exercise for a toddler every 10 to 20 seconds? Yeah. I was busy. And what happened is that it began to grow, and I grew out of my living room into a studio, and then I created a mother-child class. When you don't know what to do, make something up, which is how I've lived my life. So I created a mother-child class because I needed more income. And one of the mothers in my mother-child class said to me one day, "I have a friend at the New York Times. I'd like to bring her to see your class." I said, "Great." I didn't know what it meant. I do now. She brought her friend, Nan Ickeringle, never forget her, who brought a photographer. Now, I was not prepared. I hadn't washed my hair. I had a rip in my tights. You can see it in the photographs in the New York Times. And my son he was there, so while I was teaching, he was on my hip. And so we did an interview. I had no clue what it meant. At that time, I had 2 classes going, and I rented a studio by the hour. And 3 weeks later, this 3/4-page article came out in the New York Times, and 3 days later, I had 75 students. Boom. People came to me from Connecticut, from New Jersey, from the 5 boroughs, even from Long Island. And I had this little school on the Upper West Side, which I then was able to grow into a bigger school, into a bigger school, into a bigger school. People thought I was nuts because I was teaching toddlers. And people always thought I was nuts because I was always innovative. I've always thought of something new. Oh, that's a good idea. Let's see if it works. And if it didn't, I didn't do it. And if it did, I kept going. Within 3 years, the schools in New York were calling me to find out what I was doing. "I'm teaching exercise." "No, what are you doing?" "I'm teaching exercise." "No, what are you doing?" "I'm teaching exercise." But I was also teaching success. I was teaching the love of learning. I was teaching kids 2 years old how to get along with each other. I could get a group, it took me 10 weeks. And the first week was chaos, but after 10 weeks, I could get a group of 2-year-olds to line up against the wall and wait their turn. I know. It's like, that was good. And I'd watch them, they were so cute. They'd go. I said, stay there. No, stay there. No, stay there. So then I decided to open a summer camp in East Hampton. And we rented a house. We put an ad in the paper, and we had a bunch of kids show up. And somebody said to me, "Why is your camp known as the best camp in the Hamptons? It's only 4 days a week. It's the most expensive, and you only go to 3 o'clock." I said, "Because I am the best." If someone asks you that question, what are you supposed to say? It was a mistake? No. So I sold my first book in 1971 at a cocktail party in East Hampton. That doesn't happen anymore. I met Joni Evans, who's an editor for William Morrow, at this cocktail party, and I told her all about this wonderful book idea I had for toddlers, fitness. And she said, "That's a wonderful idea. Do you have an outline?" I said, "Of course." And she said, "I'll pick it up Monday morning on my way back to New York City." So I wrote it over the weekend. I mean, what else are you going to do? And she took it. And she called me Thursday. She said, "We want your book." I said, "Fantastic. And we're going to offer you $3,000. I said, "Great." Right away, I called William Morris Agents. I did everything backwards. I called William Morris Agency. And I said, "Hi, this is Susie Pruden. I've just sold a book to William Morrow. I need an agent." And they got me an agent. And she got me $5,000. So I handed my book in to her, and she said, "You can't hand this book in. It's a lousy book." I didn't know how to write. But my husband did. So he wrote the book, and that was the first book, and that was came out in 72. And I've written 14 others since then. He wrote most of them. But then after I divorced him, I had to write them. And that was an interesting experience because I didn't know I had learned to write during that time. It was great. You know, and I know you know this. So when I was writing books in the beginning, I was writing books and then typing them and then cutting and pasting them, putting them all over the living room floor and rearranging the cut and paste, scotch taping them, then piling the papers back here, retyping them, and I did this until the book was finished. So as I would write a book, when I would hold it, it was like a baby. I take it with me wherever I went. It was a great experience. I've only written one book by myself. I've had writing partners most of the time. And that was another toddler book, and it really is a beautiful book. But also during that time, I did television, and I did a lot of TV. People would call me and say, "Who do you know that would be a good person to demonstrate exercise? Who is a celebrity in your school that we could get for our television show?" And I'd say, "Why would you take a celebrity for your television show when I'm the one teaching the celebrity? Why don't you use me?" And they would. It was like, it's very interesting. You have to ask. You have to put yourself out there. You can't pretend that you don't know what you know. And you have to be able to say, well, "What about me?" So the Newsweek called me one time and said, "I'd like to talk to one of your celebrities about fitness, and so that they can tell us what they know." I said, "Well, why would you talk to a celebrity about what I'm teaching them when you can go right to the source and talk to me?" So they did, and I'm quoted in Newsweek. And NBC called me to get one of my celebrities to be in a pilot with Frank Field for a show they wanted to do on health. And I said, "Why do you want a celebrity? Why don't you choose me?" So they did. And they didn't take the pilot, but someone else saw the pilot, and they took me for another show, which I was on for 3 years, the Prime of Your Life. And I had a wonderful, this is very important. This is why I'm speaking at Missy's event on the 30th of this month. Missy, stand up. This is Missy Anderson, and she's a very dear friend of mine, and she's having an event at the end of this month, and it's called Passion on Purpose. Find Your Hero Within. And she has flyers with her. Thank you. She has flyers with her, and you got to talk to her because she's fabulous. So I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're there, but I'm not. I knew there was a purpose for this, but hey, just a second. It's coming. It's coming. It's really about saying yes, and it's really about putting yourself out there. And now I remember what I was going to say. I had a producer at NBC on my show that I was just a part of. His name was Larry Johnson. And I would call him every week with an idea. And I would say, Larry, I have an idea for a show. And I would tell him my idea. And he would say, thank you, Susie, that's a great idea, but we're not ready for it yet. I said, okay. He said, but keep calling. This is a very important thing that I'm telling you, because most of us don't keep calling. Following week, hi, Larry, it's Susie. Got a great idea. Tell him my idea. He'd say, thank you, but I don't think we're ready for that yet. But keep calling. So I did. Following week, hi, Larry. I did that for a year and a half. And one day, Larry called me. He said, Susie, how would you like to do a show? It would be your show, 6:30 in the morning. And he explained it's an interview show, Fit for Fun with Susie Pruden. I said, just tell me what time and what day. And I had 10 shows on NBC at 6:30 in the morning that were my show. So I had my own show on NBC. And then the Today Show hired me to be the fitness reporter for the Today Show. So I had all of this going on, and it was very heady. And then I'd had enough. And I divorced my husband, and I sold my business. I mean, I literally walked away. How many of you have ever had that experience when you're done? And you're done. You're just done. And I was done. And I walked away, sold my business, and then I went into my eat, pray, love experience, only I didn't eat very much. Anorexia was my favorite addiction. I only had it for a few months, but boy, did I lose weight. It was wonderful. And everything fit. You know, it's very dangerous. It's really dangerous because you go shopping and everything looks great. So you buy it. At least I did. I had the greatest wardrobe. Remember, I had a great wardrobe. And I would go in and spend $2,000 or $3,000 in a shot. Yeah, those were the days. Yeah, you know, when you have your eat, pray, love experience, you don't really have brains. At least I didn't have any brains. And that's when I fell in love with a man that was 15 years younger than me. And we moved to California. And that's about the time I joined the Inside Edge. And I was a crazy person. It was interesting because I was rich, I was a celebrity, I was beautiful, I was thin, and I was completely and totally out of my mind. I did not know what to do. I couldn't make up, I didn't want to be Susie Pruden Fitness Guru, but who was I going to be? I didn't know how to be this person because I was always this person, and this person hadn't shown up yet. Well, here she is. So at the time, I had told people when I was leaving New York, I don't want to be Susie Pruden anymore. And my mother was joking with me. She said, yeah, you left Susie Pruden in New York when you drove out there, but she flew out there and met you when you got there. I couldn't get away. I finally had to gain weight to get out of a leotard. I mean, it's amazing. People didn't recognize me without I walked into NBC one time dressed, and my producer didn't recognize me because I wasn't wearing a leotard. And the kids, when they would see me on the street when I had my school, and I'd be dressed, they would because I was wearing clothes and not a leotard. So I don't wear leotards anymore. But okay, back to 1986, Inside Edge, Out of My Mind. I kept trying to make things up that they didn't work. And then I met Louise Hay. And it's because of you that I met Louise, because we were speaking on the same stage. And you asked me, where do you want to sit? And I said, next to Louise. And so you put me next to Louise. It turns out we live 5 blocks from each other in the Palisades. And we became great friends. And she would come over to my house, and we would exercise together. And one day she said, her hip hurt. And I said, so what does that mean? You're the person who made that up. What does it mean? And she told me. And I said, okay. And I said, Louise, why don't we do a video? I'll do the exercises, you do the affirmations. And then we did. We did a video, we did a book. And that got me on the Oprah show. And that was and then that also, Oprah also called me, and we were working together for a while. That's a secret. And 8 months later, I was homeless. Interesting experience. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't have a team. I didn't know how to handle it. And I thought I would do all these amazing things, and they all fell through. And one day I was in my house in Topanga, and my rent check bounced, and all the jobs I had lined up for myself for the following year, this is in February 1990, canceled. None of them knew each other. They all just called me on that one day and canceled. That was a moment. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, I have absolutely no money. I don't know what kind of skills I have, because all I've done is exercise. I've made up some workshop stuff, but I really don't know what I'm doing. And I'm about to lose my home. And I looked at the ceiling. I lived in this gorgeous little guest house in Topanga. And I said, thank you, God, you must really love me, because this is going to change my life. And the interesting thing about that statement in the time was I meant it. And then I had an interesting moment with my ego. Sitting in my chair in the kitchen, I have to get a job. My ego said, no, you don't. I said, well, yes, I do. And my ego said, you can't get a job. And I said, now, meanwhile, the ego is sitting here. I said, I have to get a job. No. We're not going to eat if I don't get a job. Absolutely not. I have to get a job. Now, this little ego is now growing. And pretty soon there's a jolly green giant. And it's standing above me, and I'm saying, I've got to get a job. You're Susie Pruden. You can't have a job. I said, I have to get a job. What will your mother think? Who the hell cares what my mother thinks? Get down here. I said, you think I don't love you, don't you? You think I want to throw you away, don't you? I love you. I really do, but I have to do it now. You can help me, but you can't run the show anymore. I have to. Come here. Jumps in my lap, and I give it a hug. And I say, come on, let's go to work. And this little Pillsbury Doughboy character in my mind, you realize this is all in my mind. I know. Then we walk off to wherever we went. And I got a job from a friend of mine, because we were working with the same teacher, and he said, Helene, you need someone to work in your office. Susie, you need a job. I called Helene. She said, Susie, I don't know how to give you a job. I said, Helene, I need a job. She said, I'm only going to pay you $10 an hour. I said, that's $10 an hour more than I have right now. Now, you have to understand, I used to make $5,000 a day. So now I'm looking at $10 an hour. That's an ego death. And she said, but I'm going to ask you to do things like pick up my cleaning. I said, I'll pick up your cleaning. So I went to work for Helene, and I'd be answering the phone. And everybody knew me. Susie, what are you doing working with Helene? I'm helping her. It's $10 an hour. But what I did, now this is also important. She needed real organization in her office. And her then secretary said, who was leaving, could you organize Helene's office? I said, what did I say? Sure. And she said, I said, well, an organizer would normally get $75 an hour, so I'll just charge you $25. So I walked in at $10 an hour and walked out with a job for $25 an hour. And I worked there 3 days a week until I left and left my house. And I'll tell you, those were the scariest months. I would wake up sweating so much that I could slide out of bed. I mean, it was frightening. I had a pot of stew on the stove that I just kept adding stuff to. I've never been so scared. I had no money. I had no career. I had no idea where I was going on the 31st of May. So on the 31st of May, I left my house, and I went, the first night I stayed at my friend Jonathan's house, and then, oh, this is a funny story. I had this big, huge truck where I put all my stuff in storage, and I had to take the truck back the next day, so it's parked on the street, and I'm staying at my friend's house. And he wasn't home. I'd forgotten he left the keys for me under the mat. Now, how many of you remember the Sports Club LA? Yeah. I had been a member at one time, and that's an expensive sports club. And it was a block and a half from where Jonathan lived, and I had to go to the bathroom. And I'm not going to pee behind a bush in the middle of Los Angeles. So, and I'm wearing a dirty white sweater, jeans, sneakers. I never wear sneakers. I don't like them. And, I mean, they're practical, but they're not pretty. And I'm going to go, I know that the Sports Club LA is right over there, but they're going to know that I'm homeless. Do you remember the movie, The Body Snatchers? Okay, and when someone hasn't been snatched yet and someone knows it, and a snatcher sees someone, so I'm sure that I'm going to walk into the Sports Club LA and I'm not a member anymore, and they're going to go, and, but I'm brave. So I walk in, and I walk to the ladies' room. Nobody screams at me. Nobody throws me out. I'm there, and no one knows I'm homeless. And they have a phone bank, and I have a phone card, so I make some phone calls, and I walk and meet Jonathan, and I go to sleep, and I get up the next day, and I'm on the road. Homeless. My first stop is at the Hyatt, the La Jolla Hyatt, because I'm a famous person. I may not have any money, and I may not have a home, but I'm famous. And I'm speaking there the next day. So I'm there for 2 days, all expenses, and I'm speaking. I sell some product, I make a little money, and then I'm off to Rancho La Puerta for a week because I'm a famous person. And as I'm driving into Rancho La Puerta, I know I'm going to be there for a week, and I don't know where I'm going the following Saturday. I lived that way for 10 months until and some days, I mean, I've got stories that they're frightening, but you have to get creative. So then I roomed with a friend of mine from the Inside Edge, Sharon Huffman. Yeah, I know. So we each had a room in a house in Del Mar. We created an empowerment series. Both of our lives were a mess, and we're teaching people how to live their life. It's perfect. Charging them $1,000. I mean, you just make it up. And after that, I can't remember what happened after that. It really was an outrageous experience. And then I'm sitting with my sister in New York. We're going to go visit my mother. And we're both broke. And we're tired of, now, we were both very rich. Now we're both broke. And we inherited a lot of money. And one of us says to the other, maybe someone will die and leave us some money. And the other person says, that's probably not a good idea. And yeah, because anybody that we know right now that's going to die, they're not going to leave us any money anyway. Maybe someone we don't know is going to die and leave us some money. 6 weeks later, I got a phone call from my cousin. I go, oh no, my uncle died. No, it was someone that I didn't know. My grandfather was a philanthropist. My grandfather, there was a lot of money. He used to buy, he had 3 college colleagues in concentration camps that he purchased out and brought them to the States. And they had been basically mentally destroyed. And he supported them for their whole lives, and then the money went to their children. Well, one of the kids died. She didn't have any children, and she left my sister and me the money. And so all of a sudden, someone I didn't know left, remember, ask. Maybe someone who we don't know will die and give us some money. And they did. So no matter how insane your request is, and that's good on both sides, be careful what you ask for, because you are going to get it. And sometimes it isn't pretty. So we were able to move back to LA and get restarted. And then years went by, and I want to talk about my latest thing, because there were so many things that worked and didn't work. How many of you have that going on in your life? Yeah. You just have to pick yourself up and go for it. Say yes and figure it out. You make a mistake, you throw it up against the wall, it doesn't work, don't do it. Throw it up against the wall, it works, do it. And so that's what I've done all my life. And now at 75, I've just started a new business, and it was an accident. And you all have a card on the table. Yeah, it looks, may I hold that for a second? It looks like this. And it's about my publishing company, which I'll tell you about in a sec. And if you would like to receive a gift from me for hypnosis, I'm also a hypnotherapist. I forgot to throw that in. I had a big company for a while. I'll give you an MP3 with 4 hypnosis processes on it to write a best-selling book, and 4 hypnosis processes on it to make more money. Do you know who Greg Reed is? He wrote 3 Feet from Gold. He's with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. So he did my processes, and in 1 month, increased his income 3 times. So it's free. If you want to talk to me about a book, check that off. I'm going to tell you about that right now. When my sister and I took a workshop in 2006 with James Malinchak, we were told to write a little book. I've always written fat books. We were told to write a little book. So we did. And it was called Susie Prudden's Itty Bitty Weight Loss Book, because that was the iteration of my life where I was doing weight loss with hypnosis. And we did the cover. We bought the obligatory 2,000 copies. I think we have 1,800 left. And it didn't work. So I asked my sister to change the book, change the cover, ugly cover, and change the title, or change whatever you need to change. Let's get this book selling. So it's Christmas 2014, and I had been coaching entrepreneurs, and I was getting very bored with the same old thing. I don't like to use the phone. The money's in the phone. Pick up the phone. I don't like the phone. You're not going to make any money if you don't pick up the phone. I like email. Does it work? No. These were the conversations I was having, and it was getting, then I'd hypnotize them to pick up the phone, and they'd start to pick up the phone, and then they'd start making money. How does that work? It works. Don't ask. So what happened is my sister took the book, and she handed me the cover. She handed me the book, and I'm looking at it. And where it had said Susie Prudden's Itty Bitty Weight Loss Book, it now said Your Amazing Itty Bitty Weight Loss Book. My name had been on everything since 1965. My name wasn't there. My ego had a moment. You sure you don't want me to do that? You use my name? I don't care. That's $1 million business. Let's do it. So 4 days later, we were in business. 2 weeks later, we had our first author. And 6 weeks later, we published our first book. We now have about 90 books that we've published. We have 54 bestsellers. And it's an itty-bitty book. So if anybody wants to talk to me about writing an itty-bitty book, just fill that card out and check the box. And here's why I'm speaking at Missy's event. I follow up. If you don't want me to talk to you, don't check the box. Because if you check the box, I will call you, and Missy will tell you, I will call you, and I will call you, and I will call you, and I will text you. And then I'll call you again. And if you don't want me to call you, you have to call me and tell me to stop calling you or die. Because I'll keep calling you. And it's interesting because I did a radio show last week with someone who said, you called me for 1.5 years. And I said, well, you asked me to call you. It was that simple. Now we've become friends and we're doing all kinds of stuff together. She's with KPFK. It's all because I called. So Missy said, when I was going to talk, she said, I want you to talk about follow-up and follow-through. I said, you do? She said, you're the best. Which for some people means I'm the worst. And some people call me pushy. And I don't care. Do you know, there's two things that people either really, 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 really like me, or they really, 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 really don't. I'm polarizing. And if you like me, that's great. And if you don't like me, that's great. You don't have to hang out with me. I probably won't like you either. So it works. I don't pretend to want everybody to like me because it won't work. Then you lose yourself. And I am much too in love with myself to want to lose myself. How many of you really feel that way about yourself? You really like who you've become? Good. And if you don't like who you've become, start liking you, because you ain't going anywhere. Now, what I have found in my life, and I have this workshop that I'm doing at the end of August called Your Mess Creates Your Magnificence. The person I have, and if you're interested, please sign up. The person I have become, I've become because of the messes in my life, because of the struggles that I've had. I mean, how many of you can imagine what it's like to know that you're about to lose everything? Everything. And then you'll be on the road and you won't know where you're going next week. Now, I had a lot of really great friends, so I didn't have to sleep in my car. And I didn't have to do that. I had a lot of great friends, a lot of great opportunities. Remember, I was famous. And I had a lot of miles, so I could go back and forth because I had been traveling, touring before. But you really become, you have to dig deep when you're facing a mess. And I've had a lot of messes, and I had to dig deep. And I had to figure it out. And I had to say, okay, that's not working. What do I have to do? What do I have to do? And when I was homeless, the question that I asked, what do I have to do to make money today? Because I was doing it day by day. And then I'd buy some soda, and then at one point, I had a whole bunch of soda cans collected, but I had no money and I needed gas. So I took the soda cans and got $3.37 worth of gas. I mean, you get very creative. So think about your life and the messes that you've got and get creative. Because when you get to that place above the mess, you can't go back. And that person that you've become is a better person than the one you were, because that's what this life is about. We are all soul beings having a human experience. And if we can take the opportunities that occur, that look like horrific messes, feel like our messes, and pull ourselves up above it, then the soul expands. And I think of ourselves as little soul beings with a chart in our room when we go back, and say, okay, homeless, got that one. Ego, got that one. Broke, got that one. Rich, got that one. So you get to check them all off, and your soul evolves. And that's what we're here to do, to evolve. Because as I always used to think of us as the cells of God. As the cells of God, God is evolving as we are evolving. And if we don't evolve, God doesn't. So for God's sakes, evolve. So I have a ton of stories. I gave you a smattering. And I want to tell you one more thing about itty bitty. Itty bitty books don't make money selling books. But I tell people how to take their book and turn it into $1 million business. And this woman, I said, create a certification program teaching cannabis coaches. And she wants to do Mary Jane parties. I said, okay, so all your certified cannabis coaches will do your Mary Jane parties. She called me up one day crying recently because she said, these are happy tears. I said, what happened? I just sold 61 people into my cannabis coaching program and made $92,000. I said, okay. Thank you very much.